The first crematorium in Auschwitz became operational in August 1940. A special group of prisoners, stokers, operated it. When the Nazis began the mass murder of people in gas chambers, the Sonderkommando was renamed the Sonderkommando, Special Detachment. There was no leaving this commando for other work. The prisoners employed in it were murdered every several months and replaced with new workers. The first attempts to murder people in Auschwitz using Zyklon B were conducted in the basement of Barrack 11. During the two-day slaughter at the beginning of September 1941, 600 Soviet prisoners of war and 250 Poles were killed. Shortly thereafter, the first chamber in which people were murdered with gas began functioning in the main camp, next to crematorium number 1. The death factory began operating. In the summer of 1944, almost 1,000 prisoners were members of the Sonderkommando. They were almost exclusively Jews. They were isolated from the other prisoners. They knew they were doomed. There could be no witnesses to the Nazi crime. Therefore, in the fall of 1944, some members of the Birkenau Sonderkommando revolted in a desperate attempt to escape. All of them were killed. In January 1945, when the camp was evacuated, about 100 members of the Sonderkommando managed to mingle in among the other prisoners and leave the camp on the Death March to Germany. These few survivors provide the testimony about the core of darkness.
The day I arrived at the camp, I entered a completely different world. I had no idea where I was. I ceased being human. I didn't know who I was or what I was doing. Everyone asked, "What is this place? Are we in hell? Is this some ghastly nightmare?" I was 17 years old. Shlomo Kirschenbaum said that a Dayan from Markuf works in one of the crematoria. I went to see the wise man to ask for advice. I asked him what I was supposed to do. He said, "Don't worry, we are here in order to fulfill the commandment given to us by God. This is His wish, and we must act in accordance with His will." This conversation took place in the crematorium. He told me, "We must tell the next generations about this." Man is strong. The will to live is stronger than the desire to commit suicide. It's easy to take one's own life. My greatest wish was to witness the defeat of the Germans, and from that moment I did everything in order to survive, to live and work.
Jako pracownik Sonderkommando też tu pracowałem. Stoję w miejscu, gdzie znajdują się dwa krematoria, 2 i 3. To są 2 krematoria bliźniaki. Prócz tych znajdowały się jeszcze 2 krematoria, 4 i 5 tam w lesie. Te krematoria nie nadążały spalania tych zwłok, więc zastosowali palenie w dołach. Te doły znajdowały się w tamtym lasku. Prócz tych 4 krematorium znajdowały się jeszcze 2 krematoria, tak zwane bunkry, domek biały, domek czerwony, za krematorium numer 5.
The gate leading to Crematorium 2 was located about 100 meters from the ramp. Therefore, we could see how many people from a transport were sent to the crematorium. There were transports in which everyone was sent to their death. There was no selection. The undressing room was located underground. It had a concrete floor. Wooden benches lined both sides of the room and clothing could be hung on hooks. Everything was made of pine. Each hook had a number, but there were only enough hooks for 100 to 150 people. We told the people, "You will now take a shower and be disinfected," and we ordered them to undress. Our job was to keep the people calm if they showed signs of fear. The Germans were most afraid of chaos and the people rebelling, which would disrupt the entire orderly process. Many women came from religious families and had never undressed in front of strangers, and some not even in front of their own husbands. There were young women, 18 to 20 years old. Some people cried from shame and fear. The people were afraid. It's that simple. The gas chamber was large enough for 2,500 people. The walls were grey, the ceiling too. Fake shower heads hung from the ceiling, one after the other. There were a lot of them. An entire transport would enter the chamber at one time. Everyone who entered it thought they were going to take a shower. However, no water flowed from these shower heads. A feeling of unease was noticeable when men began to enter the gas chamber, with women and children already in it. It seems to me that the people began to sense that something was not right. They may have checked the shower heads and found out that no water would flow from them. Family members stood together in the gas chamber. Sometimes they embraced. At first they stood some distance from each other, but the more the chamber filled up, the tighter they were packed together. Mothers held small children to their breast. I didn't look them in the eyes. I tried never to look them in the eyes, so they wouldn't notice anything. Everything they were told were lies. Everything we said was a lie. I saw the SS man who closed the door. The door was reinforced and airtight, as in a bunker. Four columns surrounded by a metal mesh were located inside the chamber. The Zyklon was thrown in through these columns. The SS men threw the gas in from above, while everyone below waited for the shower. One of the Germans went on the roof and threw the Zyklon B gas into each opening. The material itself was in the form of blue pellets, which dissolved when coming into contact with the air and released the poison gas. Cries of horror and despair were always heard. People often prayed. Shema Israel could be heard, but no one listened to them and nobody watched. I often said to myself, where, if not here, would miracles occur and signs appear? But nothing happened. Nothing. This was not just about 10 people. It was an entire nation. But nothing happened. Nothing. Then a camp doctor would come and look through the peephole in the door to check whether or not everyone was dead. Then he reported that the door could be opened, that the business is finished. Das Geschäft ist fertig. When the people were being gassed, we had to collect the victims' clothes. Everything had to be piled in one place so that it could then be quickly removed. We carried the things up the same stairs that the people had just come down, to waiting lorries. From there they were taken to warehouses called Canada, where everything was searched and sorted. After the door of the gas chamber was opened, I saw the corpses standing like sculptures. There was a horrible stench inside because, in the face of appalling fear, people could not control their bodily functions. People tried to climb up as high as possible in order to escape the gas. Sometimes the skin would come off as a result of the gas. Within 30 minutes, after the door to the gas chamber was opened and the ventilators were turned on, we went to work. We began removing the corpses. They stood up next to each other, packed tight as sardines. At first, when the corpses were still warm, they could easily be separated, but after 10 or 12 hours they became cold and very heavy. We dragged them in different ways. We would grab them by the arms and pull, or if they were intertwined, we had to grab them by the neck and drag them like animals. There was no other way. Removing 2,500 corpses from the gas chamber took 12 hours, sometimes longer. I didn't feel anything at the time. I just pretended I was dragging boxes. We weren't careful with them. We simply dragged them like inanimate objects. Part of the Sonderkommando dragged the corpses, part worked at the lift. One group loaded them in the lift, upstairs others dragged them from the lift, and still others carried them to the ovens. Everyone did their job. Barbers cut hair, dentists pulled gold teeth out of the mouths of the corpses and pulled rings off fingers. I had actual dental pliers. I collected the gold teeth in small bags hanging down by the side of my leg. I then called Schwartz, who we called the treasurer. He had a small laboratory where he separated the gold from organic material. He then smelted it and gave the gold bars to the Germans.
Tu była winda. Tu była winda. Tu się ciągło tych nieboszczyków do piecy. O. Tu był piec jeden, piec drugi. No i tak było 16 tych pieców tutaj.
Ten prisoners worked at the ovens. When the lift came up, 4 prisoners dragged the corpses and placed them in 4s on the concrete, in front of each oven door. A special system of cremation was used. Bodies of overweight people were placed together with thin people, because they had a lot of fat, which accelerated the burning process. It was more difficult to burn thin people because it was harder to keep the fire going. After 15 minutes, I had to stir the corpses with a pitchfork. We then waited 30 minutes until the corpses were burnt. It was a huge factory. Meanwhile, we rested, washed our hands, drank a little vodka, and sat around. When we worked at night, we could even sleep for half an hour. While the corpses burned in the ovens, the ashes were removed on the other side. We took wheelbarrows, filled them up, and took the ashes outside to the yard of the crematorium. Thousands of people arrived in the transports, of which only ashes remained the next morning. Deep holes were dug in the yard, which were filled with bones, until the order came to dig them up and smash them into little pieces. Lorries arrived every couple of days and took the ashes to the river, so that nothing remained. From the time the first transport arrived from Hungary, the ovens burned day and night. Transports arrived continuously. If work had not ended in one of the crematoria and the next transport arrived, the people had to wait. If crematorium 3 was still full, the victims were taken to either crematorium 2 or 4. The corpses were burnt downstairs, and our rooms, with comfortable beds, blankets and pillows, were in the attic. We lacked for nothing. Life upstairs went on, regardless of what was happening downstairs. We got up at dawn, about 5:30. Roll call for the entire Sonderkommando from crematorium 2, those who worked at night and those who were just starting the day shift, was at 6. After ending our shift, we had to wash because we were extremely dirty. They gave us a piece of soap. We could also change clothes. In the summer, after work, we would go out to the yard of the crematorium and sit on the grass. When there was free time, we picked weeds. The lawn was well cared for. Washing, cleaning, there was always something to do. But sometimes we simply didn't do anything. We had money and gold found in the undressing room. People hid them in their clothing. We gave them to the Germans, who, in return, brought us sausage and alcohol. There was a lively barter arrangement between us and the Germans, like at a market. We ate and sang songs. We could do anything we wanted to upstairs. We were left alone in the attic. Otto Moll was in charge of all crematoria in Birkenau. Sometimes the gas chambers of crematorium 5 were not big enough for all the people. In such cases, he would personally shoot those left outside. There were many cases when he threw living people into the burning pits. He treated the prisoners of the Sonderkommando like animals. In the summer of 1944, there was a widespread rumor in Birkenau that the camp was to be liquidated and the prisoners killed. Therefore, I secretly began writing notes and burying them around the area of Crematorium 5. Sometime in mid-1944, we came up with the idea of illegally taking photographs in order to document our work. Our entire conspiratorial group met at the western entrance to the gas chamber of Crematorium 5. A Greek Jew, Alex, took out a camera, aimed it at a pit which was burning at the time, and clicked the shutter. Another photograph was taken on the other side of the building, where women and men from a transport designated for gassing in Crematorium 5 were undressing among the trees.
To były te bunkry do gazowania. To był jeden, to był drugi, a tu był trzeci. Tu był trzeci. A tam były dwa te doły. Jeden tu, drugi tam. No i tam się paliło.
Once, when the door to the gas chamber was opened, I began pulling bodies out of it. Some people were still alive. One of them asked me where I was taking them. I took him to the pits, where the Sonderkommando threw the people into the fire. We treated the fact that we were there as our fate. We had no sense of guilt. I didn't see anyone cry. The tears had dried up long ago. Before the Shoah, the time of calamity, I was a believer, very devout. After the Shoah, I rejected my faith. The reason I did was because of what I experienced and what I saw. Something in me snapped, and my faith vanished.